Will Warrior be good in P4? PvE? Probably not. It's looking pretty bad there. PvP, however, we're looking pretty good in the Gladiator stance. So let's run through the changes here. First couple things is obviously we got 3 runes. I'm just going to go over Gladiator specific stuff here. So Sudden Death being the first one. It's the rune we're going to take here to add to our back slot. But our melee crits have a chance to activate Sudden Death for 10 seconds. While Sudden Death is active, you may use Execute on any target, and you will always have 10 rage remaining after using Execute. This is huge. We'll be able to execute. If they blink, we'll still be able to push Intercept immediately. So this is a huge damage burst to our build here. Flagellation's been changed, so it's been redesigned. So we're never going to take this talent anymore. I can't really see why we would take it. It would really just be to increase rage generation, but we have another method of doing that, and I'll get to that in a minute. Booming Voice talent now increases battle shout duration by 30, 60, 90, and 120 and 150 seconds, and reduces its rage cost by basically 100%. So we're going to take 5 points into that now, and it's going to pair really, really well with some other talents we're going to take as well. Commanding Shout's rage is now removed, and duration is increased to 5 minutes. Same thing as Booming Voice, right? So it works great with being able to have your buffs up at all times. Huge buff to Recklessness as well as Retaliation and Shield Wall. So we're getting our cooldown duration reduced from 30 minutes to 5 minutes, which is a huge buff. We're going to have this basically up for every fight, every duel, every world PvP, every boss pull, so on and so forth. At first glance, Recklessness could look like a nerf itself, since we're reducing the crit from 100% to 50%. However, just keep in mind that your guys' base crit for Reckless, or for as a warrior itself, is going to be around 40 to 50%. So we're going to be sitting around 100% statically once we pop Recklessness. So this shouldn't be an issue at all, but it's going to be great for damage. And we're also getting a new baseline ability, Meat Hook. So obviously throw out a hook chain to restrain the target and pull them towards you. It costs 15 rage. It has a 30-yard range and has a 35-second cooldown. And it may not use the ability enemies more than 1 level above you. So this is going to be great for PvP in general, okay? This is another charge. It's another intercept. It's going to work great against mages after initial blink if they're going to try to recall, right? I don't know the exact name of the mage ability is, but if they try to recall, it's going to be great to battle that. For the life of me, I could not find the blue post explaining exactly how the additional damage output benefit from defense skill in some way affects warriors specifically. I did read it a few weeks back, but basically what's going on here is you'll see a buff in the top right there that looks like kind of a bull. That bull buff is giving you 4 AP for every defense skill over 300. Now, this is pretty huge for us, guys, because basically what's going to happen here is our Shield Slam now gains an extra 15% attack power as additional damage, so which is incredible, right? So if we're getting an extra 400 AP just from our Shield Slams based off of the additional damage output, we're now getting an extra 100 damage just from that one change, plus the other AP we already have. So we're going to be sitting at a pretty high amount of AP in Phase 4, so our Shield Slams are going to be hitting much, much harder. And for some of the other changes that are kind of miscellaneous here that do affect Gladiator itself, we are going to have increased rage generation when attacking a target that's not actively attacking us. I'm curious to how this is going to work. Does that mean that if somebody is targeting us, we get less rage generation, or how does that work? So group content will be a little stronger as well, where normally Immortal Strike would be better in group content, but should help us with rage generation and dumping executes. We're going to be doing a ton of damage with all this excess execute damage and excess rage. So it should really help us there, build that rage. Thunderclap now hits 10 targets. Great in group contact as well. We're going to be spreading around that rune that we have for Thunderclap to slow everybody's attack speed. And then we're also getting another spell called Valor of Azeroth. Now, Valor of Azeroth grants all party and raid members 1.5 times the warrior's level and attack power, and 5% crit chance to all spells and attacks. Now, this does not stack with Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer. So this is huge. We're getting another AP buff if it stacks on top of Battle Shout as well as Commanding Shout. So we're gonna have 3 buffs rolling all at once. More crit chance is massive for Gladiator Warrior, so we can hit those really, really, really big executes. I've already mentioned this earlier, but Meat Hook itself is it's gonna be a really good tool for warriors. We're gonna have a 30-yard range to be able to pull somebody into us. So when it comes to mages themselves, we would definitely want to use this on their first blink so they don't recall. I mentioned that earlier. If we want to get more specific on class matchups and this ability, we can definitely talk about it at another time. I'm thinking that it might be helpful to a lot of my viewers on class matchups specifically for Gladiator Warriors versus other classes, especially in Season of Discovery, having so many things being changed. It might be helpful to you guys to create some one-on-one videos on duels and so on and so forth. So if it's something you guys want to see, just let me know in the comments down below and we can make that happen. So let's talk our runes. So our new runes of this phase, really the only three we're going to take that are new is Sudden Death, Dagger Specialization, and Defense Specialization. Everything else is pretty much the same and has not changed. So Shield Mastery, Warbringer, Sword and Board, Devastate, Focused Rage, Furious Thunder, Gladiator Stance, those are all going to stay the same. The biggest difference here is going to be Sudden Death. It's obviously our melee hits have a 10% chance to grant sudden death. Sudden death allows one use of execute regardless of target's health state. This is going to be huge in regards to our burst potential as a gladiator warrior. We're not completely dependent on block value now with our shield slams to do damage. And with all this AP scaling we're getting from using shield slam, our free shield slams are going to add a lot of damage to the sudden death procs for the executes and just our overall damage in general. Now, don't worry, before you say that I'm fried for picking Dagger Specialization, there's a really big reason for this, and it has to do with our tier set bonus. Our tier set bonus itself, on the 4-piece, we get an extra rage for every time we deal auto attack damage or take damage. Now, in reality, Dagger Specialization is just a placeholder for the fastest weapon we can obtain. It's going to give us 5 weapon specialization, which will help us with a little bit of hit percentage, as well as a little bit more crit in PvP. Now, this is going to synergize with our build really well, because out of all the abilities we're going to press, Shield Slam, Devastate, Revenge, Execute, these abilities themselves, they don't use weapon damage as part of the damage that they output. Devastate itself uses weapon DPS, so it's not a matter of how hard your weapon hits versus how much DPS it does. So you're not going to lose any damage by taking a faster weapon, which is going to just allow us to generate more rage, allowing us to push bigger executes and dealing more damage to kind of finish people off. And I think that about covers it between all the playstyle differences between Phase 3 and Phase 4, so hopefully that helps. Now, when we're looking at the talent trees, there's 2 different builds here that I haven't decided on yet. However, I'm leaning way more towards the Fury Prot build. So the 2 talents here that are going to be really good are Piercing Howl, which causes all enemies near the warrior to be dazed, reducing movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds, and Enrage, which gives you a 25% melee damage bonus for 12 seconds, up to a maximum of 12 swings after being the victim of a critical strike. This is also going to pair really well with Blood Craze, which regenerates 3% of your total health over 6 seconds after being a victim of a critical strike. So we're obviously going to be getting hit a lot in PvP. These 2 abilities will help us maintain, stay alive, deal more damage while after being a victim of a critical strike. If you do want more buttons to push as a Gladiator Warrior, because we really only have a handful of buttons to push, right? You can play an Arms Gladiator build, which is going to be the same as the Prot tree as the Fury one, which is the same as Phase 3. However, what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be going down the Arms tree and taking Impale. With that, we're going to be taking Improved Overpower for lots of overpower procs to do damage with. Now, this does bring into question some of the runes we are taking to assist in the damage of Overpower. However, Overpower is dependent upon weapon damage itself. So if you're taking a dagger in this build, you're trolling yourself, you're going to want a slower weapon for the bigger Overpower hits to allow yourself to do more damage with Impale and so on and so forth. And then you're going to be stacking Deep Wounds as well as using Rend in this type of build. I don't think it's going to be as good as the Fury Prot build. However, there's no way to know because I don't know what gear is going to come out in regards to weapons in Phase 4, so only time will tell. As mentioned earlier, if you guys are wanting to see some specific class matchups, maybe Mage versus Warrior, Warlock versus Warrior, so on and so forth in the Gladiator spec, just let me know down in the comments below. If there's enough people wanting to see something like that, maybe I'll build a more in-depth guide on the specific matchups on what abilities to use when, what items and engineering I use to help in certain matchups and really close the gaps between the different balances. And finally, guys, if you have any questions, just put them down in the comments below. I try to answer every single comment in my video. I feel like I did a pretty good job of that last time, even if, you know, there were some discrepancies or disagreements on the way Warrior works. So I'm pretty active in the Warrior Discord itself. A lot of people holding on to the Arms dream there. However, unfortunately, in Season of Discovery, the way is the Gladiator Warrior. So if you have any questions, DM me in game, send me a comment, and we'll get those answered.